Well, hi, and welcome to this session where we're talking about pivoting and innovation and timing in a global crisis. My name is Michael Dunn. I'm the Managing Director of BYU TV and BYU Radio, and we are so fortunate today to be joined by Jim Olson, the President of the Utah Jazz and President also of Larry H. Miller Sports and Entertainment. And Jim, I want to take just a minute. You're a guy that needs no introduction. So, of course, I'm going to introduce you.
I do think I need an introduction, but thank you.
Well, just a remarkable person, and in so many ways you have distinguished yourself. I think it's safe to say a lifetime sports junkie. You love sports.
I do, yes.
You've been involved the whole way.
I have.
Jim, like me, is a graduate of the University of Utah Department of Communication. And how the two of us got here in a BYU Management Society, I'll never know. But
It's just, I guess it's fair to say you just never know what's going to happen.
This could be the first and last time. We'll see how that goes. But seriously honored to be a part of this and to talk about this important topic. Jim did graduate from the University of Utah, went on for graduate studies at Northeastern University in Boston.
That's correct.
In sports marketing and management. And really, I think the thing that's interesting is working your way up at the collegiate level all the way to the Utah Jazz, starting in ticketing.
Yeah.
I mean, you did that. And
yeah.
So many things you have done. I just want to fast forward to, it's been about a year. I think it was October of last year. And I want to start out and get your thoughts on this, because you're standing at the dais with Gail Miller. And I bet you've watched this over the course of a quarter century, so many people stepping into that role.
Sure.
And now it's Jim Olson.
Yeah.
Jim Olson being named as president of this. What was it like? What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Well, I was surprised as much as anybody else was, including family and friends. They had to check and make sure it was the same Jim Olson that they thought and knew. But it was an interesting time in my life. I actually was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I never had a goal to get to this position. I never had a goal to get the next job or to be promoted. And my goals were always do the best you can at where you're focused and what your responsibilities are. And not that I didn't have long-term goals, but they weren't about positions or titles or anything like that. And so to have it happen, it was a little surreal. And I remember in the little press conference we had to announce it, I actually got asked a question from one of the media members that I was so not prepared to answer. And it was right then that I realized, okay, you think you're prepared for this, but you've got some work to do. But it's been great. It's been a great year.
Yeah. Now, that announcement was not like you'd been sitting back, because you'd just come through the renovation of the Vivint Arena.
Yeah.
You'd had your hands in so many other things, from the Salt Lake Bees, Tour of Utah, I mean, all these other Miller properties, and you've been busy. So, it had to be a little daunting to say, speaking about our topic today, pivoting. How did you do that?
Well, I'll tell you, the first way that I did it was knowing that I was surrounded by very good people. I don't think anybody can be very successful in anything they do without being surrounded by very good people, and those people were already in place. Mm-hmm. We have such a strong group of employees, very loyal, hardworking, dedicated employees, and so knowing that I had the experience, people dedicated, people willing to do what's asked, it did bring some comfort, to the situation that I was now entering, and because you have that foundation, you're willing to say, we can try this. This is good, but what's better? This is working, but how does it work better? And even ask, what are we completely missing? What don't we know? And so just having that foundation of employees just gave me all the comfort in the world to ask the hard questions, ask the questions that needed to be asked, and be open to some of the answers that might come, even if they're different than how I may view them or different than maybe what we've been doing in the past. So just very fortunate to have that foundation.
Yeah. As you mentioned foundation, I can't help but think about your great dad, Ron Olson.
Thank you.
Who unfortunately passed away in June. But I knew your dad in his printing business.
Right.
And I saw a man who hustled, who innovated, who found every opportunity, that he can. Now, I'm just saying that what I saw from the outside of Bubba, as he was affectionately called.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you learn from him? And specifically related to this topic, pivoting, innovating, because I saw that in your dad. What did you learn?
Well, you touched on it a little bit. He was in the printing business, and later in life he got involved in another business, but he kept his foot in the printing business also. And when he was young in the business, and I actually worked a little bit for him in my college days, so I learned a little bit of the business and saw what he did. And he was a hustler. He was he just got out and hustled and outworked people, and so I learned that. I just having tenacity, having a little bit of grit, and I learned that from him. But when it came to innovation, what happened is the printing business changed in the last, let's say, 10 years of his involvement. And I mean, paper was going away in many businesses or aspects of business. And he pivoted and he got into the credit card business. And all of a sudden they were running credit cards. And so he was able to see, ahead that, hey, this printing thing, there's always going to be printing, but it was at a lower level and what's coming up. And so being able to pivot his product but the key between all of these things was his relationships. I always knew that people liked my dad. You would see how they'd interact with him. But I'll tell you, after he passed, the heartwarming stories and it just they didn't stop. And it's the story of whoever it may be saying he always made me feel like I was the most important person. He always made me feel like I mattered at that moment. And so you tie that back to innovation. Well, when he had to change his product or he had to change his approach to selling printing and those products, people trusted him. People knew he cared about them, cared about their business. And so, I think there was a level of his ability to relate and connect with people that allowed him to change his business. And people think, well, does he really know what he's talking about? Is he going to be able to deliver? Is he going to be able to make good on this promise? And so it was his reputation of being someone that treated people right, cared about people, actually, I think, allowed him to innovate throughout that change in the printing business. But thank you for asking about him. I appreciate that.
Just an amazing man, and a chip off the old block, right? as they say.
I would hope so. Thank you.
Well, the other part of our topic today, we've talked about innovation, but timing is the other aspect that we're exploring today as a part of this BYU Management Society Symposium. And the timing for him was right, as you said, to make those pivots. I was also really amazed at you right out of the gate when named as the president of the Utah Jazz. You just immediately came in and said, I think your priority was about the in-game fan experience. We want to make a great experience. You made this immediate adjustment right out of the gate. How did you come to that? How did you decide that's what you wanted to do?
Well, I think it was two things. One is it goes back to all my years in ticket sales. I spent about the first 20 years of my career in the ticket sales element, one way or another. And when you're in ticket sales, you're talking to people every day that are buying tickets. And number one, there's relationships that are built, and number two, they have a platform to tell you, what they like and what they don't like, and you have a choice to make. Are you just worried about selling the ticket, or are you worried about really creating this experience that comes with buying that ticket? And so I had all these years of being face to face and talking on a regular basis with people who were spending hard-earned money to buy tickets, and so I've always had a real I don't know if soft spot's the right way to put it, but just a real appreciation for our ticket buyers, kind of being the lifeblood of the organization. Right. And then, we used to say, and so part two of that, we used to say a long time ago, we sell tickets, we sell hot dogs, we sell Cokes, that's kind of our jobs. And maybe that's what it was 27 years ago or so, when I started. but now we sell experience.
Yeah.
And in all business, all industries, no matter what you're doing, it's so much more than just the product itself. And so as I gain that appreciation that this is about the experience, I'm never going to be one that takes a 3-point shot or hits a layup or a free throw. That's not my skill set, nor should it ever be. But so I can't control wins and losses. But what I can do is even in a game where you lose, that person's walking out of there and they're saying, that was a very clean and safe arena.
Right.
The food was great. What? People welcomed me. They said, thanks for coming. Pre-COVID, they'd give me a high five, someone as I'm entering the building. We're not going to be doing that this year. But,
right.
And so how are people leaving? Of course, everyone leaves happy after a win, but we're not going to win every game.
Right.
So how, when people are leaving after a loss, they say, you know what, that was still a great experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, so anyway, I was very, and we had done a lot, but you can always improve. And I was just very focused on making sure we do all we can to make it a great experience.
Innovation, again, it's critical because, again, you're dealing with a fan base that is different than 25 years ago, right?
Yes.
They now have multimedia,
yes.
every sensory sort of experience. So you had to factor that in, right? As you're thinking, this is not just selling a ticket, come watch the game.
Yeah.
It is the total experience, and you had to consider all that.
Well, and as you talk about that, I mean, the technology even starts at home with the wonderful television options we have.
Right.
Huge televisions with incredible clear pictures and hundreds of different stations and subscription type options, and now you're competing with all of that. And how do you get someone? And you got your refrigerator around the corner, and you can get up and go, and you don't have to come and park, and so you start wondering, how do you compete with all of that? And so you talk about technology. What technology has allowed us to do is really get to know who our fans are and what they want. There's the one thing 20 years ago, me having a phone conversation with, hey, what'd you like about the game last night? Oh, the hot dog was good. But now we are collecting data on a regular basis. When fans come in and they're on our app, and okay, how are they using the app? Are they using it to find out where the hot dogs or the beefsteak sandwiches are? Are they using it to find out where the team store is? Are they using it to get stats, updated stats?
Right.
Are they using it to look up visiting team players and who's in town and who's the coach? And so we're tracking all of this data, and we're really using technology to understand who our fans are, what they want, what type of experience, the information they're looking for.
Right.
And so it's become a big part of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think you really embraced that second screen experience,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Along with the data, which hopefully informs and makes you better. Jim, let me ask this, because I know there's probably many people listening to this today who are saying, yeah, but you're the Utah Jazz, you can do this, blah, blah, blah. I think they forget that even though it is the Utah Jazz, you are a mid-market NBA team.
Yep.
Faced with economic realities, you can't buy and purchase everything. So you've got to innovate. I mean, you have to do that. You have to be able to deliver that experience. So the question is, how do you do that? And what would you say to other people who are out there like, well, I've only got a sort of middle of the road budget as well. We're not the well-heeled competitor in our particular industry. How do you innovate? And I guess, how do you also instill that in the rest of the organization? Because you had that vision.
Yeah.
How do you push that down into the organization?
Well, I think the first and best way to push that down and get that to spread throughout the organization is to get them to experience that. Get them to, some years, we don't do it every year, but some years when we open the doors for our first game, we take the management team up to the doors and we welcome people. And we get to experience, them coming to the game, the mother bringing her daughter. And I don't want to be stereotypical, but you'd always say, oh, it's the father bringing his son. But you see a mother coming through the gates with her daughter. And you start thinking, wow, okay, this is different. This is more than, I grew up, we mentioned my dad earlier, I grew up going to a couple games a year with my dad, and it was a highlight of the year to get to go to some Jazz games. We'd go watch Larry Bird, and when he would come to town, he was one of my dad's favorites. But but you got to get them to experience it. You got to get our employees to see, when they go and clean up a spilled popcorn, and now not just cleaning it up, that's not only their responsibility, but they're empowered to go up to the concession stand and get them a new popcorn and take it down, and maybe even take a drink with them. And this custodian who in the past their job was just I'll go make sure it gets cleaned up and then my job's over, but now they can engage back and just have them experience that. And people come back to recap meetings that we have and say, hey, here's what I did and here's what I experienced, and not that this should always be our motivation, but you reward that person, and someone's sitting over here and saying, I want to be rewarded. I'm going to do that next time.
Right.
And so it's really, getting them engaged and having them experience, one-on-one relationships with a fan and how they can improve that experience. And so we've empowered people. That's something that we've really tried to innovate with is we're not going to question if you got to solve a problem, and it might cost us a few bucks, you're going to solve that problem. We're in the problem-solving business because we want that guest experience to be as good as possible. So getting them engaged and experience that was one of the best things we did.
That's so brilliant. I mean, you talk about that empowerment. It reminds me of Toyota. A number of years ago, people said, how do you build these quality cars? And the whole secret was they said, anyone can pull the handle on the assembly line when they see something that's wrong. And that's what you've done.
Yes.
Sort of a hybrid of that, and maybe even a Disney experience you're trying to make the fans have. Well,
you've mentioned two of the most important businesses that we have followed. Larry Miller was a huge fan of Toyotas. Mm-hmm. He would use examples exactly that you just did. He'd use examples from Toyota. They actually had a word called Kaizen, which is continual improvement. Mm-hmm. And it's constantly getting better. And Larry would talk to us about Toyota and how they had this mission to just continue to improve and get better, and we've implemented that. And then you talk about Disney. We've implemented this Disney Institute into our business. We've brought Disney to our place. We've sent people to Disney's Institute at their place. And there's not a better example of cleanliness and safety and everyone doing it with a smile. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So those are perfect examples.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You mentioned what a remarkable person Larry Miller in terms of what he was able to do and build and realize. And now, of course, Gail in his stead, who you work very closely with. What about those two? What lessons can you share with us in terms of what you've learned from them with their ability to rise up and meet challenges?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question, because I can tell you, if not the two greatest leaders, two of the greatest leaders I've ever been associated with, and in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be very transparent. At first, after Larry passed, I think we were a little bit nervous of how we talk about how Larry was and how we talk about now that it's Gail, but I've learned I can be open and transparent. Larry was the most incredible entrepreneur, right? I mean, he just could grow business, and he was a leader. I talked about some of the qualities I learned from my father, tenacity and drive. His book called Driven,
right?
Perfect book, or name for his book. And he just willed himself to succeed. Building the arena at a time that the risk involved with finances and everything, but Larry could will it and drive it to happen, and his leadership along those lines, really pushed us to those limits in a positive way. Gail comes in, and I will tell you, and people sometimes raise an eyebrow when I say this, but Gail has led in ways that Larry couldn't have led.
Interesting.
And in wonderful ways. She's very strong, but with that strength, she does bring compassion.
Yeah. I've seen that.
You've seen that, her giving back to the community and the things that she's done. But Gail is every bit as strong as Larry, but just there is this element of compassion of how we can always do good in the community, how we can be a unifier, how we can bring people together. She expects us to give back to the community, to be a part of the communities where we live. And if you can give back in a variety of different ways, but service is one of the values of our company. And Larry was part of those values also, but Gail has just brought a new element. And there is no one that could be leading our company today the way that Gail is, and we're very fortunate that way.
Yeah, great leaders in every way.
Absolutely.
It's a remarkable organization.
Yeah.
All right, we need some more insights. I want to go back in time. It's March 11th, 2020. You're new in the helm.
Yeah.
I remember that day because I opened the sports page, and all of a sudden we're talking about this pandemic hitting the NBA, and I see Rudy Gobert's name at the center of it, that he's diagnosed with COVID-19. You're probably on that same trip. Will you just walk us through, because you talk about having to innovate and do something on the spot. Timing is everything in that sense. How'd you do it? How did you manage that?
To be honest with you, and I hate to admit this, hindsight, I feel like I probably didn't get off to the best start that I should have. I literally remember thinking in that first day or two, what are we going to do for the next couple of months? Like there was this, and I put that timeline in my own mind.
Yeah, we all did.
I just
fairness.
this is going to be a couple of month thing. We kind of tone it down for a couple of months, and it goes away. And so I was just there was this focus on the first couple of months, and obviously a misstep on my part, but it was what it was. And our first and the one thing I do think we got right was we had to identify any health risk, health issue, concern. We shut down the arena. We brought people in hazmat suits, which today we would know you wouldn't have to do.
Right.
We know so much more today, but we had people in hazmat suits spraying down the courts and locker room and work area where people had been. And so, the immediate was, we had this new health concern that we'd never had to deal with before, but we also didn't know really what it meant. I mean, keep in mind, back then they were saying you don't need to wear masks.
Right.
I mean, we were all learning.
That was the instruction.
Yeah, we were all learning on the fly. But so, it was hard. It was hard to be on the forefront, from a media standpoint, the NBA looking at us. But what I did, I guess the hindsight that I do like is I like that it gave us the opportunity to lead out. And I love challenging our leadership team, and I challenge them often, and they've never failed, but challenging them that, okay, everything's wiped off the board now. This is almost like a brand new start, and we've got to start asking all the questions. And we spent several days huddled up in a pretty big conference room. We knew to kind of keep separate and keep washing your hands, but we had whiteboards going all over the place. What about this, and who would do this, and why this, and how this, and I think part of the innovative process there was asking every question possible. And once again, I said it earlier, asking hard questions, asking questions maybe we didn't want to realize or deal with. And so, the short term was we were flying blind, but the best thing that we were doing was constantly asking questions and not in an immediate rush to answer them, but knowing that these are things we would have to answer over time. And then, you get through that 2-month period or thereabouts, and you realize, okay, this is going to be a lot longer than a couple of months. Then you can start plugging answers in, and that's where we started to develop long-term strategies, and we're still developing them. When we open up the season, for the next season, we don't have a start date yet. We think it'll be sometime in January, maybe February, and we're still long-term strategy, planning and so forth. But it's really asking the questions that get you on the right path to then, okay, now to innovate, we got to go here.
Was it a collaborative experience with the NBA? Did you learn from them in terms of the way they sort of led out with innovation?
Initially, not so much. I think they were asking a lot of the same questions that we were. I will tell you, after we got through the initial phase, the NBA really stepped in. They got all the health experts, hired a lot of their own health experts, and now we have regular phone calls with the NBA, and they have become a huge resource. It's not just us asking, how are we going to make our arena safe? We're talking with every other NBA team in the league. What are you guys doing, and who's doing? How are you going to test, or how are you going to take temperatures, or how are you going to enforce wearing masks? And so now we're on these calls on a very regular basis, and each department, your ticket sales team, your sponsorship sales team, your marketing team, your IT team, your finance, everyone's also having their own discussions with the NBA and other teams, and then we come together and we just, okay, what's the best for us? What makes sense for us? And so enormous amount of collaboration now.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? I think that collaboration is such an important element, especially as we talk about how do we innovate when the crises come, right, with all that stuff.
It's interesting. I so many times people have asked, you didn't ask this question, but it just popped into my mind. People have asked in the last 6 months, how has it been? And my answer has often been, it's been hard and it's been challenging. We've had to really step back. And I had someone come up to me the other day, and he said to me, he didn't ask how it's been. He just came right up to me and said, "You are so lucky to be dealing with this right now." And I stepped back from it like, "Are you kidding? Do you know what you're saying to me?" And he said, "Think of what you're learning. Think of what you're experiencing. Think of the things that you haven't been forced to figure out." And I went away from that conversation. I shared it with our management team. I just said, they're really, I don't want to downplay, the challenges of the pandemic. It's terrible. But we can change our paradigm in a way that we are going to be a part of really changing how we run our industry.
Right. And we'll be better because of it.
Because of it. Even when this pandemic is over, there are things we will have changed that will stay. We are going to probably always have hand sanitizing available, and maybe it's just a bad flu season.
Yeah.
And there is mask wearing, and so going forward, we are part of changing this industry for the better, for the long haul.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, a lot of people, Jim, as you're talking about this person coming up to you in the last 6 months, they tend to think Jim Olson, Utah Jazz, that's his whole thing, but that quiver with Larry H. Miller Sports and Entertainment is huge, and you have impacts such as the Megaplex Theatres you've got to shut down. You had the Tour of Utah, one of actually the premier bicycle race after the Tour of California canceled, which it also had to cancel. And what I'm thinking about is let's say the Tour de France. They initially said, hey, we're going to cancel, then they hold the event after delaying. I want to Monday morning quarterback just a little bit and talk about timing. Are there any regrets with any of those? Or do you think it was handled right? Or anything you would do differently in terms of any missed opportunities there?
I don't know. Would we do some things differently? Absolutely. Let me give you an example. We were one of the slower movie theaters to close down, and now we ended up having no negative effects of that, fortunately. But knowing what we know now, we probably would have been a little quicker to close down. Now, on the other hand, we've opened back up, according to the guidelines in the markets where we have the theaters. We've opened them back up, and we're seeing some good success. But the timing of these things is always a question. We lost our Salt Lake Bees, our AAA baseball team. We lost that season. We didn't have control over that. That was a league-wide, thing, and shutting that down. I think we have a saying around the office: it's more important to get it right than get it done quick. And so maybe sometimes we've been a little slow, but and not slow because we're not paying attention, but slow because it's always easy. It's always easier when you get it right than when you get it wrong and you have to reel it back. And so, I don't think we could have pulled off the cycling race. We tried. We even tried to do the Ultimate Challenge, which is the amateur race, and we got right up until the deadline where we kind of had to pull the plug on that one at the very last minute. And so, there are things that, what would we have done different? Maybe just timing on a few things, but for the most part, I think we have erred on the side of safety. Yeah, we have done that, which is wise. And as you say, it's the pioneer adage to measure twice and cut once. That's the one. There you go. Wonderful philosophy. Exactly. Hey, Jim, let's talk about. I think about your first year, not just COVID, but.
it's been such an interesting year. All the unrest in our country,
Yes.
The racial strife, Black Lives Matter. I mean,
Right.
it has had such a correlation, landing squarely with you, with the Utah Jazz and the NBA. A tough thing to sort of manage through. How do you do it? How do you be respectful of a lot of your players? Every player probably matters very, very deeply to, and they're looking to you at this time of challenge. How do we really answer the call here and make statements about what we value? Which again, the Millers, it's intrinsic in their organization. But how did you address that challenge specifically? And I know it's ongoing, but
it is.
Any insights we can learn from that?
Yeah, I think so. The first thing, we do have a responsibility to support our players. Now, that doesn't mean to support them, in something that would go against our values as an organization. But it's not only a responsibility, but we felt that it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity. I'll be very transparent about myself. I grew up in Salt Lake City. I grew up in a neighborhood of predominantly white neighborhood. The high school I went to, predominantly white. Do I feel like I'm racist? No, I don't. Have I learned in the last 6 months that there are things that go on in it can even be our community, our city, our state, our country, that I had no idea was such a challenging situation for the Black community and other people of color. And so, here's what we have. Here's what we've decided. And I mentioned this earlier. We want to be a unifying force in this community. Now, with this issue, not everybody's going to agree. And what we're actually finding, there are those that are saying we should be doing more to, let's say, even support Black Lives Matter, support social injustices. And there are those that are saying we've already crossed the line and are doing too much. What we feel strongly about is we always can put ourselves in a situation where we can learn. We always can put ourselves in a situation where we can benefit by hearing what someone else has to say. We may not agree with it, but not being willing to hear what someone has to say, is not who we want to be as an organization. So this issue rose. It came to the forefront, and as you mentioned, the NBA, very high population of Black players in the NBA. We got pushed to the forefront of it, and we wanted to be respectful to the voice that they felt like they hadn't had. And so now how does that apply and roll into the community? And so now it's urging people in areas such as, let's get out and vote. If you want to make change, then vote. We're not telling you who to vote for. This isn't a political agenda from that standpoint. But we opened up our arena. Our arena will be a polling station, to try to make it easier for people to vote. And so, how can we be a force in just getting people to listen, getting people to talk, getting people to say, I don't agree with you, but tell me what you believe. Tell me how you feel. As we keep that dialogue going, we're very optimistic we'll make progress for everybody to just respect and appreciate different opinions.
Right. Advocates for civility and dialogue and conversation.
Absolutely.
I think one of the hallmarks of the Jazz that I've observed, many people have said this as well, as we talk about dealing with crisis, is, and you mentioned foundation earlier, it seems like you always, of course, we got to have people that can make shots and do all the work, but you always get the good citizens, it seems like. Is that a criteria? Is that a great way to sort of be preventive in terms of dealing with these things when they hit?
It absolutely is. And, that goes back to Larry Miller. It was very important to Larry, and Gail continues it today, but very important that, we go after athletes that will represent who we are as an organization. I've been in a room where I've heard Gail speaking. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar, some of the best athletes in the world, and she's telling them she expects them to represent our organization and who we are. When I say who we are, the Miller family, the Miller organization, represent them, in a way way that that Gail expects it, and you know what, they hear her, they respect her, and so it is a priority. And it doesn't mean you might miss once in a while, but in the world of NBA, the Utah Jazz has done as good a job as anybody out there to try to bring good quality people to our organization. But it is a priority.
Has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, and probably a wise one as well.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure in this first year of your experience at the helm, the one thing you've learned is that the only constant thing is uncertainty and change, right? It just continues to happen in this world of ours. What are your takeaways from that, Jim, as you go forward? Because nothing feels really stable or sure right now. You've pivoted in many ways, even in this first year.
Yeah.
For you personally, as a leader, as a manager of a major organization, what are some takeaways as you go forward from here?
Well, I've touched on it, but I'm gonna explain it a little differently. But I have changed my whole mindset that I want those challenges to hit me head on. I'm not saying I'm always going to be ready for them. We as an organization will be ready for them. But now to maybe instead of have this fear of what's around the next corner, it's like, okay, we're ready. What's around the next corner? What's coming? And when it hits, let's go. Let's be ready for it. So it's a little bit of just, once again, this change of mindset that we're not going to be fearful anymore. And not that we were full of fear, but when some of these things did start, it was this, then it was this, and we're like, okay, what's next? I'm not necessarily asking what's next out of fear. I'm asking, all right, what's next? Because let's go. I'm ready. And it's this aggressive mindset of we're ready for the next thing. And I'll be honest, I actually have the thought once in a while is I actually don't want to get back to just the days of, okay, we have a basketball game tonight and a Bees game, and how are the movie theaters doing? We welcome challenge. And we want to take those challenges head on, and we're going to build a team that's prepared to do that. And that wasn't our mindset 6 months ago. It was, and we will always focus on, here's a basketball game, here's a concert, all these events that we do. That will always be our priority. But our mindset is, we're built and ready for the next thing that comes.
Yeah. I just had an alliteration that came to mind as you said that. It's a bad one, but prepared to pivot. It seems like is kind of a mantra. Like you want to know and be ready. So you don't fear what's coming. Right. But again, you have those foundational elements that you're ready. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, it does. It goes back to, I guess, one of the very first things we talked about is let's build the foundation, our employee base, which is as solid as can be, and our structure, how we're structured, and who has what responsibility, and make sure those responsibilities are very clear and people understand what their goals are and what we need them to do, and have that foundation all in place. I think nothing's ever going to be normal again. You even go back to 9/11. We don't travel, and nor will we ever travel pre-11 again. Coming to an event will never be pre-COVID again. It's never going to go back to that. And so having that foundation and just welcoming those opportunities to pivot, welcoming those opportunities that yes, they're going to change our business, but let's be prepared so they change it for the better.
Right. Well, Jim, I can't end our conversation on being prepared, on being adaptable, being able to handle any situation without a mention of your better half, Susie.
Yes.
And what a remarkable person she is in her own right. Phenomenal artist, mother of 4 children.
Yes.
And just really a great person. You're a dynamic duo, the two of you. I think all of us would be wise to learn all we can from our spouses. And I just want to ask you this, in terms of this topic, meeting challenges in life, what have you learned from Susie?
Oh, well, if we have another 4 hours or maybe 4 days to really tell you that. When you brought up Susie, I have to share this with you. she's so good at keeping me humble. You know, she tells me on a regular basis, you know, Jim, one of these days you're going to have to go out and get a real job. You know, and in a sense, she's right. I mean, I'm so fortunate to do what I do. But let me tell you what I actually had this conversation with Susie this morning, and I also, you know, my son John, and Susie and John were in our kitchen. And I don't say this to expose Susie, but she was having one of those mornings where, you know, not everything was going right, and you could see her trending to maybe getting a little frustrated and a little bit in a bad mood. And 5 minutes later, she doesn't play the guitar, but John plays the guitar, and it was sitting in the kitchen. 5 minutes later, she picks up the guitar, and she's joking around, strumming the guitar, making up a make-up song. And when she stopped, I said, you know, Susie, I said, John, I'm glad you're here too. You two have the most incredible ability that when something goes wrong or you sense yourself getting in a bad mood, you bounce out of it like that. And you know, in the workplace, if I could do that better, like something will weigh on me and I let it weigh on me for a week and maybe even affect my personality in the office, and am I letting it affect how I relate to people or deal with another situation? And Susie brings the positive back into life instantly. And I think it's because, she has such a kind heart and a loving heart, and other people always come first before Susie. She's the most unselfish person, you know, that I've ever been around. And it's just that ability to say, you know, I'm bringing positive back into life. And so I'm glad you asked me that, because I had that experience this morning, and life is happy around Susie and you know, my children, who I mentioned, I know you know, and they deal with me, and you know, they keep me humble all the time. They laugh. You're what? What's your no? All we know is you can't screw in a light fixture in the house, and you can't fix a towel rack, and they know I'm just a dumb guy at home that can't get anything done.
They keep you humble.
Very much so.
Well, if you're a dumb guy not getting things done at home, we salute you on all the other remarkable things that you're doing. And Jim, thanks so much for being with us here today on behalf of the BYU Management Society. You've given us great insights on how to meet these challenges, so thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure, and I'm honored to be asked, and great to spend time with you, and appreciate our friendship and all you've done for our family, and it's great to be here today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jim. Again, Jim Olson, the president of the Utah Jazz, and also Larry H. Miller Sports and Entertainment, and we hope you've enjoyed this session.